All right. Hey, everybody. I'm Rachel Porter, class of '06. I work in advancement in the alumni and alumni engagement office. And it's really great to have you here participating in this. I hope you're able to check out some of the other events the last couple of weeks of April. We have some alums speaking, some really good stuff. We've been working with Avery and Andre and Emily to make this month happen, and Jamie as well, Jamie Joyce. So I'm just going to read the Kyugo land acknowledgement, and I'll keep an eye on the waiting room in case we get some people who join us. The Kyugo land acknowledgement is Wells College recognizes our collective responsibility to acknowledge our colonial history. This land is the traditional land of the Kyugo Nation, a member of the Haudenosaunee Confederacy. Wells College commits itself to ensuring the traditions and culture of Indigenous peoples are embraced and reflected upon in order to engage in solidarity with the Kyugo Nation. And this is approved by the Wells College faculty in May of 2018. And I'm going to hand over to Leah Mackin and to Tara Kohn, and they will introduce today's events. Thanks for being here.
Thanks, Rachel. Thanks also to Avery, Avalos, who invited us to participate in this event and has been a part of the Activism series planning committee. Thank you to Emily Von Nostrand, Andre Lynch, and Jamie Joyce, the other members of the planning committee, and also all the other folks. I know that there are likely many more hands and minds in that project. So we're really appreciative for the opportunity to participate in this event series.
Yes, and thank you to all of you who are here today to support our students. We're so excited to present their work in progress they've been working on this semester. Okay, so I'm going to move forward on the slide. Leah and I are going to give a brief introduction to this event. And just so you have a sketch of the outline of the order of events, we will have two panels of students giving presentations on their work. At the end of each panel, we will open up to a conversation with all of the panelists, and we will take a short collective self-care break between the two panels, really as part of extending our conversation throughout the semester on the dangers of burnout with activist work and the need for us to take care of ourselves in the process of doing this kind of work. We invite responses and reflections in the chat throughout the program, but we will also have some time at the end of each panel for some more open discussion.
Yeah. We wanted to introduce you all to our collective community. We've got this list of our students. This order is the order in which the students will present, and then ourselves. So we'll start from the bottom of this slide. That's me, Leah Mackin. I'm Assistant Director of the Book Art Center.
And I am Tara Kohn. I'm Assistant Professor of Art History here at Wells, and so delighted to be collaborating with Leah on this course. This is a team-taught course that we've developed and have been teaching side by side.
So we're moving along here as an opportunity to just inform you all attending the event just a bit about the course itself. So this is, like Tara had said, a team-taught course across art history and book art as special topics. The goal of the course is for students to produce a research-based activist project, and that's a rather open-ended kind of prompt that folks have really responded to in some really beautiful and powerful ways, as you'll see today. The structure of the class is rooted in the idea of these case studies, looking at specific artists or artist projects as examples of activist works that we either created with artists or by artists in response to artworks.
Yeah, so we've been having an ongoing discussion all semester as we've been moving back and forth between what we've been calling art history and theory sessions, where we talk about a contemporary or historic artist or collective who makes activist work based on research, and using those ideas as a platform or a foundation for the work that our students are doing in the studio.
Yeah. One of the sources for students to really kind of pull from to consider for their artistic output and their research-based output are a series of questions. And one of those questions that we started with is, what do you care about? So that's something that we actually would love to pose to the group as a way to engage and really create a collective environment for this event and this program. As you wish, we invite you to answer that question in the chat. What do you care about as a kind of framework for thinking about your own activist practice, your viewpoint in the world, what kind of what makes you want to connect and really contribute.
So if you add those thoughts in the chat, you'll be joining us in that conversation that we've been having all semester. What do you care about? What do we care about? And how can we intervene as makers and as thinkers? That prompt is open throughout the discussion. So if you, as we're working through our presentations today, if you think about something that you care about, please feel free to enter it into the chat at any time. In preparing for the event today, we had a conversation with our collective, with the students in our class, about some examples of case studies or examples from the history of contemporary art that have been salient and resonant to them. And we wanted to very briefly talk about a couple of these examples and some of the ways that we've been talking about them, because we think that you'll see threads of these conversations emerging in the student work. So I'm going to just speak for a few minutes about this piece by Glenn Lygan that's called Come Out, number 12, created in 2015, which was the center of one of our art history meetings. This work was created in response to an earlier piece by the sound artist and composer Steve Wright, who in 1966 created a sound composition called Come Out. This piece was based on a statement made by Daniel Hamm. It is an example of a work of art made by a very specific instance of anti-Black violence. The statement that Reich was working from says, I had to like open the bruise up, let some of the bruised blood come out to show them. This passage was taken from Daniel Hamm, who is a man who was detained and sustained a beating from the police after an event when he was trying to protect some African-American and Puerto Rican children from being brutalized by police forces when they were outside playing. And one of the horrific sort of outcomes of this event was that he was denied medical assistance because he was bruised but not bleeding. And so in response to that, he makes a statement about how he wished he could open up the bruise to show them the wounds that he had sustained so that he could get the medical attention that he needed. In response to this event, again, the composer Steve Wright created a work called Come Out, which was a looping of this sentence that Daniel Hamm said over and over again until the sound, it began to dissolve and become a kind of cacophony that was illegible as words themselves. And in 2015, the visual artist Glenn Lygan made a response to this work. And if you look closely, I don't think you can see it on the screen, he's playing with that same language. The words come out to show them over and over and over again, so that the echo and the power of those words become almost illegible. And yet this striking sort of visual, overwhelming experience in relationship to that event. I think that this is a piece that our students have continued to think about in thinking about a specific instance of violence and a particular way that an artist can take on the role of activist by creating work in response. And then Leah will talk about the second example.
Yeah, and I think that to just reiterate the one powerful aspect of that Glenn Lygan piece is its illegibility. At a certain point, the text becomes just blurred. There's a the way that piece is created, its moire pattern overlaps and creates a visual that is responsive to that cacophonous sound. And as a counter, we're looking at a piece now by the artist, educator, and activist Brianne Tremmel, Silence Do No Good, from 2017. And this was a public presentation, a billboard size piece in a public square in Cleveland, Ohio, as part of a large scale public art series in Cleveland. Brianne is an artist who we had the opportunity to invite and work with students about a month ago or so. And in that visit, we looked at a lot of Brianne's work and thought about the ways that Brianne uses text, typography, humor to really connect and draw individuals in. In the small image at left, you can see that folks are walking in front of the billboard piece. And what I really think is important about this piece is its actual placement in the public square, and the way that that public square at that time is actually used a lot by protesters. The text of Brianne's piece, Silence Do No Good, is a play on the historic pseudonym that Benjamin Franklin used to publish letters under the name Silence Do Good. So Brianne's really actually encouraging the types of communicative power of protest and language.
Beautiful. We wanted to, before we turn it over to our students, say a few words about conversations that we've had in class about the vulnerability of presenting work in progress, and share some thoughts about what we're hoping to get out of this event and this conversation. We have talked about the vulnerability of what it means to share not finished work, but work that is an ongoing practice and an ongoing conversation. And I think the benefit of that is that this event is really designed to offer our students more ideas and more suggestions and more thoughts as their work evolves. We feel that this kind of presentation generates productivity and the possibility of continued evolution of the work. And it's
ourselves as audience and participatory members of the event today towards our students. Questions that we're posing are, what does this project make you think about? And do you know of any other resources that we should know about? So if there are any kinds of advice or information to share, that spirit of generosity would be really appreciated.
So maybe we'll hold those 3 questions as ongoing questions for the audience. If you would like to participate in the chat at any time, the question we began with, what do you care about, as an ongoing question? And these 2, what does this project make you think about? And do you know of any other resources that would be helpful for us as we continue this journey? And I think with that, we are ready to turn it over to our first presenter today. And this is the amazing Sasha Brady.
Hi guys. So today I'll be talking to you guys about a piece that I've been working on throughout the semester called Suffocating Thoughts. Next slide, please. So I guess an appropriate way to start off would be the question, what do you care about? And at first, it was a very broad thing to talk about because I care about a lot of things I found, so it was kind of difficult to really narrow in on like any specifics right yet. So it started off with a journal and just listing the general things that I cared about. So it was usually like health sciences, psychology, and art, which are my main focuses. And then like eventually I started to narrow in on like a specific subject. So I decided to focus on psychology and mental illness. Slide, please. So in terms of that topic, it was still a little bit broad. So with mental illness, I decided to go towards the stigma. Initially, it was going to be something like being available, like providing help for people. And I wanted to kind of like portray that, but then it just turned into, I wanted to actually call out the issue, which is the stigma against mental illnesses that are like more common in society. Next slide, please. So in terms of that, I decided to do research on the stigma itself. So from what I've gathered, stigma is deeply rooted in our culture, and it kind of creates these ideas against people that kind of come from the media. And so it kind of just portrays these specific groups in a specific light, which can be harmful. So another thing that I found were the two kinds of stigma: the social stigma, which is what society views a particular group, and then self-stigma, which is the thoughts from others kind of like internalized to the person that's suffering from that stigma. Next slide, please. So with having said that, I decided to come up with like very rough sketches. So my thought process when it comes to projects, it's very scattered, and usually I just jot down random notes and also sketch out like thumbnails, which are kind of small, tiny sketches with very little detail for the most part. So yeah, and this kind of portrays like the ideas that I had before I decided to focus on the stigma of mental illness. So I was trying to focus on like censorship and social media and stuff like that before I changed it. So obviously now it's like still a work in progress, but yeah. Next slide. So I kind of wanted to add a little bit more to the project by adding my own experiences, and I wanted to focus on mental illnesses that are pretty common in society, like depression, anxiety, etc. I suffer from a lot of anxiety, and it can be very debilitating to deal with. In fact, it actually controls every thought process that I have. And sometimes stuff that has been said to me has like stuck with me over the years and has led to me having panic attacks. So I wanted to replicate the process of what it feels like to have someone say like kind of degrading things to you in terms of like mental illness. And yeah, next slide, please. So initially, I started out with these thumbnails in terms of the final set in stone idea for what I wanted to do. And initially it was going to be a triptych. So a triptych is basically like a set of 3 images. And usually it can like include just the environment in itself or a progression of an idea. So with this idea, I wanted to take comments that people have said to me and kind of involve that into what those comments do to me as a person. So the middle slide would be me questioning myself, and then the self-stigma would come into play in the last image, where I slowly start to believe the comments that people are saying to me, which in turn kind of broke down my self-esteem over time and kind of made me have a negative light towards myself. Next slide, please. So then I decided to digitize these thumbnails to make them easier to look at, because the previous thumbnails didn't really have, they were very vague. So with this slide, it shows some of the comments which I have since like improved on, but these are general comments that people have said to me over time, which usually is like, whenever I voice that, you know, I'm uncomfortable with something, or like something is triggering my anxiety, usually people tell me to get over it, or it's not that serious, or why are you crying about it, or something like that. And next slide, please. And with time, I start to like overthink things, and I start to think, well, am I a burden? Am I like overreacting? Am I just, the general question is why, or am I, or something like that. And in this one, I wanted to kind of start to overlap the text to create the general overwhelming feeling building up. Next slide, please. And so then it would kind of evolve into the self-stigma, where I start to believe that I am being ridiculous, I am being sensitive, and like maybe the perception that people have of me is true, and maybe I am the person that people think of. Next slide, please. And so like moving forward, I want to try and play around with text, which, as you have seen in the previous slides, I want to kind of play with size, and then also like kind of distort the text in such a way that it mimics kind of like visually what a panic attack feels like. And then also I kind of wanted to play around with how I wanted to present the piece. Right now, I think I'm leaning more towards digital, which I might, I'm actually in the process of turning it into like a GIF or a GIF, however it's pronounced, I'm not sure. But yeah, and then right now it's just more so just setting up everything for the final piece, and then just kind of playing around with what would work in like getting my message across. And yeah, that's about it.
Thank you so much, Sasha. Appreciate it. We're going to move on to Angie's presentation. If there are any questions or responses, please do feel free to continue adding them into the chat, and then we'll circle back to there. So Angiee, let's pass it along to you.
Okay, so my presentation I've titled "The What If This Were You." I feel like that is just kind of the appropriate for what I'm trying to go towards. It's just the best question. Could we go to the next slide, please? All right, I decided to go about this presentation with the who, what, when, where question ideas. Starting with the who, I am trying to speak out for all minorities of color, not only like Blacks, especially with all the current events that are going on. When we were asking ourselves what was important to us, my main thing was human rights, whether that is for education or health benefits or even just living situations. I am taking inspiration from Basquiat, who is a American-born artist. He is from Brooklyn, New York, and a lot of his art is very collaged and scratchy, but it is also for the community of color speaking out against their oppressions. I took this quote from his Basquiat's website of Self, and it says, Jean-Michel lived like a flame. He burned really bright. Then the fire went out, but his embers are still hot. And I'm proving that this quote is true by continuing his legacy and giving him credit. I really wanted to make sure that I gave my artist credit and elevated him, mostly specifically kind of criticizing Picasso and how famous he is, and he was a privileged white man and got all this credit for cubism and the awesome mask shapes that he got. And then towards the end of his career, he admitted that he got inspiration from African masks. And a lot of times, especially in art history, African art is very dulled down and talked down upon. Next slide. So my project itself is a acrylic collage because I'm more focused in ceramic and acrylic painting. I am turning this into a digital file, such as some of Basquiat's work has done now. I do have a sweatshirt with some of his art printed on. I also wanted to make this accessible to everyone in the sense that anybody who's online and could buy one can buy it, wear it, and that way it's not just in one space at one time. It can spread. It can be worn by me, my friends. People can ask about it, and then they could just see the link and go and purchase it. And it also forces people to look at it, because some person might not go to a certain exhibition because they don't believe in such and such. I had someone yesterday tell me that there's no such thing as white privilege, and my jaw just dropped. So I feel like people like that, it's bringing the art to them and making them realize it. Can we go to the next slide, please? So with this project, I'm using my artist voice and how can I reach people? And the only thing that I can try to open is empathy and asking people, like, what if this was you? What if this, like, I was kind of thinking at first, it was like, what if this was your kid? But I'm like, even then, I know people that would give a, like, they're more selfish. So it's like, what if this was you? And my idea with this was to start communities such as the little person in the middle, that's me. And then I tell my friends, my family, my fellow professors, and then they can spread that to other people and hopefully overall just spread the awareness so that I can be all over. And I also feel like you should help your, like, starting in locally is very important, especially you want to work on your community in general, and it's online, so anybody who's online, once again, can access it. I have included 2 links here of where I am going to be donating my profits of this. I chose a local people of color community garden that is south of Ithaca. I included their website where people can go and donate themselves. There is also you can subscribe to donating. And I also included the link to their YouTube, which explains completely what they are and what they do and how they began. Next slide, please. So with my collage, I decided currently, because it is a work in progress, not to present exactly what I have right now, because I feel like it would not communicate more. Right now, my words communicate more just because of how puzzle piece like it is. Currently, it is a black collage with the repetition of words that I have chosen from New York Times articles, as well as Basquiat's journals himself. These journals were not artist journals, they were his poetry and his own experiences, many pathways with that and how he thought and what he faced in the Bronx as a African American. And I decided to choose certain quotes or sections of a sentence to repeat on this canvas to try to drill it into, like, the repetition will hopefully withstand and stay with someone. such as 8 minutes and 46 seconds. I have that repeated over and over again, pasted with the collage. I also have Brent Hakinson blindly fired 10 shots into the apartment. And then also Basquiat stopped in transit 7 times. I just feel like these are resonating, and they should, when people such as say, oh, there isn't racism going on, or there isn't police brutality going on, they aren't oppressed, there isn't anything such as white privilege, like these things are showing exactly that. And I hope that when future events do occur, such as even this week, current events that happened, people will go back and think of these other events and realize that like nothing is changing still. This country was built on the oppression of people of color, and they're still continuing, and things need to change. Overall, I plan to have these on the background, and I will have a stencil created that is the justice scale with the 2 weights on the either end. One of the weights is going to be completely in the air, and one of them will be on the ground. The one on the ground will have, I'm not sure yet if I'm going to choose a specific person, but it will be a white person. And up here will be faces and people of current people that suffered from the oppression of police brutality mostly, but also other. And I plan to have it quite rough and aggressive in the sense with thick paint to make it more dramatic. But my overall is I want to show that this one white person who's alive and standing and healthy and taken care of weighs so much more than all of these deaths. And that's how the system is right now. And I want to spread more awareness and try to connect with empathy and asking people, what if that was you? Because either way, I think about it as a human, like all humans they don't want oppression. They want to be healthy. They don't want to be looked down upon. They shouldn't. Overall, at the end of the day, it's crazy to think it, but every human is 99.9 the same. We all look different, no matter who you are, whether it's because of your race or even your brother. We all look different, but 0.1 is what makes that. We're like 58% related to like crustaceans, which is incredible, but we're all human and we all deserve the same things and rights, and we're in the 21st century. We have the technology to do this. So I hope that using this helps with my artist voice and reaching out to people. Next, yeah.
Thank you, Angiee. Appreciate that. We're gonna keep moving. We'll turn over the mic to Sonia.
Okay, hi everybody. Next slide, please. Thank you. So where I started, honestly, I had no idea what I was gonna do, and it was low-key stressful. But a topic that was like always on my mind whenever I thought about activism and protest was social injustice, particularly police brutality. So I figured I would just try to think of like different ideas and like just whatever came to mind, sketch it out, and use those as references for a piece. So yeah, I struggled a lot with different ideas, but I chose police brutality because it is something that I myself have experienced and have seen many times occur without any justice served. And the first thoughts that come to mind were police brutality and how it is such a core topic in today's society, especially, and how like over quarantine with the George Floyd and everything, it was just a very stressful time. And it was just like kind of like a cherry on top. It's just like this big explosion of protests, especially amongst the younger community. So yeah, and then after that, I just went from there and started to think about specific occurrences I could refer to for my project. Next slide. So my first idea was to just sketch several eyes. And like I told my class, I have this thing for eyes. And it's just something that's very like intimate and personal. It's just when you look at somebody's eyes, and especially like during this time where everybody's wearing masks and stuff, all you really see is a person's eyes. And I feel like that tells more than what a person actually says. So that was like my first thing for my first idea, just start with eyes. And then so the first image you see on top is basically the first one I ever did, the first sketch I ever did. And it was just, I just went full throttle, just fully went in for it. So I didn't start with nothing like a doodle or anything. I just went with whatever came to mind. And then the second one was a sketch I had did after speaking with Tara and Leah, because they had helped me like understand more about representation of words as well, and how you can give them their own appearance and not just, have them like a regular, like a sentence, like horizontal. Like you can actually shape the way or position words in a way that helps give more like significance and complexity to your piece. So with the second one at the bottom, underneath the first one, you see the sentences, the lining may be looking like this, like that, like, all over the place. But yeah, in the first image, you'll see like words that are colored in. I thought of that as maybe like something that would make the text stand out more. I want the text, in this idea, I wanted the text and the image to kind of not like overlap one another, but like be on the same level plane, where like you get my message through both sides of the piece. But yeah, next slide, please. So for my second image, these are another two sketches. The first one you see, it's like a mirror image. Half of it is of a KKK member, and the other half is of a police officer. And it was basically just me thinking about this idea of like how our police system, the foundation of it really is just basically systematic racism, just like getting straight to it. And the second sketch that you see has a quote from Ida B. Wells. It says, the way to right wrongs is to turn the light of truth upon them. And that was basically just a reference to the image that I was making and just pointing out how we don't really shed light on our history as much as we need to when talking about social injustice, especially our police force and everything, and like how it was all structured and brought about in that, the first, I guess, sheriffs, you could say, used to be like slave catchers and stuff like that. Like these people weren't really thinking about the best for everyone, you know what I mean? So it was just something that I was just thinking about for my second idea. And yeah, next slide, please. So for this idea, I started to go back to my idea for eyes. And I started to think about victims of police brutality. And one that stuck out to me, like at first, was Michael Brown. And the police officer that killed him was, I believe, Darren Wilson, sorry. And so I thought to just, sketch the eyes of the victim and sketch the eyes of the police officer and put Michael Brown's last words and Darren Wilson's response to if he was to go back and do it all over again, would he do it differently? And yeah, so I thought that to be like a strong way to convey my message. Next slide. For my fourth idea, I decided this idea actually came about when I was having like a late phone conversation with my sister. I was talking to her about this creative project, and I was just like telling her how badly I was struggling, and like she was like, "Oh my God, you sound like you're all over the place." But then she was just basically telling me like the eye idea, I can just maybe do something with the center of the canvas and put like an eye. And then with the eye to be Wells quote, have it go around it, like in a circle. But then I was like, what if I did like a spiral effect where the words start off small and get louder the more it spirals outwards? And so it's kind of like a quiet protest going into like a much louder protest and stuff like that. So in these two sketches, you can see something like that, and how I was trying to work that idea into that reference. And that what I started to think about with the eye in the middle was a reference to like the evil eye, warding off evil, and just warding off any negativity and trouble that may come along with what, you know, protest brings. Because protest is like, you know, you're challenging what's already established in our system, in our society, and people don't like change. So with that is going to come, you know, oppression and people pushing back against that, pushing back against what you're pushing back in. It's just, you know, but yeah. So next slide, please. For my fifth idea, I give credits to my class for this one because they really did help me put this whole thing into like a better perspective. So like I just started to, they helped me start to think about what if I just combined all my ideas together and just, you know, make it a whole like series or like a collection of just my thoughts and stuff like that. So yeah, shouts out to y'all, appreciate y'all. But so for like how I'm thinking about starting this series is just starting off with the first idea and making it go into the last one with the spiral quotes and the eye, the evil eye reference and stuff like that, because I wanted to show kind of like a quiet, peaceful, going into a more louder, a more in your face, more apparent. It's just like, it's showing basically the progression of how people have been trying to, you know, get this message out there. Like this is a real thing. Social injustice is real. Racism is real. People are going through this stuff daily, every day. It's a real thing. It's not, you know, just something that people are just out in the street shouting about just so they can get attention. No, like it's a real thing. So that's basically where I'm at now as far as my project. I'm just working on trying to make this a whole series and incorporate it as best as I can and as clearly as I can for the people that are gonna view it. So yeah. Next slide. Yeah.
Thank you, Sonia. Appreciate that. You're passing over to Fiona. Hi, Fiona.
Hello. Okay, my project is called Pay Attention. Next slide, please. Why should I pay attention? One of the most prominent memories I have growing up is my father telling me to pay attention because it was our family motto, and that you need to really tap into like your experience and dissect it. And then, so I began to explore what I thought at the time was such a trivial idea. And with this project, I'm inspired to investigate how I could start budgeting my attention and see where that takes me. Through conversation and visual art technique, I will be representing interactions with people's journey and their attention. Next slide, please. How does this relate to art and activism? I took one of our case studies or our reading, sorry. And I found like that it really related to what I was trying to investigate in my journey for budgeting my attention. And it's a publishing by Isaac Hand in the Old Future Almanac, published in 2020. And when we were discussing my project and his interaction with his privilege and his time and how he budgets his attention, I think it was a conversation between Tara and I. It was interrogation of privilege. And I took that idea and I wanted to see what that meant for my project. Next slide. Goals of my project would be, I want to draw attention to the implications of giving up our data and how we make it easier for these capitalistic juggernauts to profit off of our attention span. It's warping our reality, and for the longest time, we will just go through life without questioning where this data is going. Next slide. Some of the questions I'll be asking my participants are, what is your relationship with social media, and what draws you in? And by asking this question, I really want to have a deep dive on what your algorithm looks like, what shows up on your feed, how does that impact your life, and so on. Next slide. Some of the other questions are, how do you budget your attention, and what are some privileges you experience? And for the second question, I purposely phrased it, what are some privileges you experience, instead of asking whether or not you have privileges that you experience, because everyone, no matter what, experiences privilege. And I want to take that opt out for the question. Next slide. My inspiration for my paintings will be along the lines of some of the sketches that I have. Next slide. This piece is called Talking Heads. It's just kind of an idea I was playing around with concerning how misinformation spreads. Next slide. This is another piece called Why Do You Sleep? It's about how we just plug in and we go on and work. And I think Leah and Tara were both talking about burnout, and this is my visual representation. Next slide. Some of the styles that I want to capture in my published piece or my finished pieces are Black Lenin by Andy Warhol, painted in 1987. And next slide. And In the Car by Roy Lichtenstein, painted in 1963. Both of these paintings, I think, will capture the pop culture reference of the time, and how we are evolving into this political statement. Yeah. Next slide, please. I will also be doing my paintings in a communist propaganda style because of what these posters stand for. They're just a time where they felt as if media could control the public, and how there's a huge connection between the leader and the follower. So yeah. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Fiona, and extending that to all in panel one. First off, that was amazing. I hope that you all have been able to scroll through and follow the reactions, questions, and generosity in the chat.
Yes.
Thank you to our attendees, our event participants, for being here and being here, really giving yourselves to our community, for our community, with our community. Thank you. Yeah, we are really on a tight schedule here. So I think one method that we were hoping could be utilized right now is we have essentially 5 minutes
Yes. So we're thinking if the students who presented, please pay attention to the chat and take those comments and questions with you. We'd like to open up the floor for other comments or questions, if there are any of those. And then we'll take a quick break and reconvene with the next group. Would anybody in the audience like to unmute yourselves and share a question or an idea? Should just do a quick break.
I'm just super excited. Everybody's work sounds awesome. I love to hear your processes. Art wasn't like a big world for me at Wells. So yeah, super exciting. I hadn't taken an art class since 8th grade, and I took one at Wells, and I was always in music, but it's really cool to see and hear your processes and your important work that you're doing, and it's just awesome. And Giovanna has a question.
Maybe we could have each of the panelists respond to Giovanna's fantastic question, which is, what is one thing you learned about yourself since we began this class?
Thanks for that question, Giovanna.
Beautiful question.
And thanks, Rachel, for those comments.
Yeah. So maybe we could start with Sasha and just go in order.
Yeah.
Wait, are we going to take the break now, or are we going to do the which are we doing?
We're gonna have our panelists just do brief responses, folks. Quick responses to Giovanna's question in the chat, and then we'll take a 5-minute break.
Got it.
At 5 p.m.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Okay, so I can respond now, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so a quick response for the question. Basically what I've learned is I like to take my own experiences and share them with other people in hopes that I can let people know that they're not alone with what they're going through, and like they can like basically share their issues with me, and we can just help each other out. So yeah. Also, I learned that I really, really like this class.
We had Angiee respond in the chat. I'll just read that out loud. Angiee says, research and sources are extremely important for activist art. I love that lesson.
Yeah, agree.
Fiona, do you have a response to that?
And Sonia?
You want to go first?
You go ahead, it's fine.
Something I learned about myself during the process is that I never really took a step back and analyzed what I focused my attention on mostly in my life. And I think that this project opened up like an avenue for that self-discovery and for that like jump into why I value the things I value. Yeah.
Yeah, to piggyback off of that, this pretty much got me thinking, like, what do I actually care about? Like, when I actually sit down and reflect on what matters to me and what I value as a person, it had me thinking a lot about that. And so going into this project, it was like a huge like self-reflection type of thing I had to do. And yeah, I learned that about myself pretty much.
Thank you so much. That's actually a perfect segue to our break, and I think we should take it so we can ensure that panel 2 has enough time to present, and we can really round out the conversation and event this evening with some discussion. So this is our collective self-care break. We invite you all to take a moment, actually like turn off your camera and maybe stand up and stretch. Think on that question. What do you care about? And if you come up with an answer, pop it into the chat for us.
We care about self-care.
Yeah.
So let's reconvene in 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Please,
we'll see you. We'll
please
see
come
you
back.
We'll see you back here. Don't leave the room. Like stay in the room. Turn off your
Just turn off your camera and dance around. Shake it out.
Exactly. We'll be back
After these messages.
5:04 p.m. Okay. Hi, folks. Hope you are all centering back towards us. I just thought that I'd share a few of a few resources that we had included on our course syllabus. And I'm going to drop those links in as folks return, and then we can get moving towards panel 2. We'll start that in one moment.
Here, sending it only
Oops.
to
Thank you.
sharing.
There we go.
I forgot about that one.
I know, it's really good.
This one that Leah is sending out, just right after this, go listen to it.
Yeah,
Life changing.
if you're really still needing some content, those two particular resources I think are really helpful. The first is a poem, the second is a podcast.
So thank you for staying with us, everyone.
Welcome back.
Welcome back. We're going to keep moving forward with our next presenter, and welcome to the second panel. Our next presenter is Emily Greenwood.
Take it away, Emily.
Hi. So my project, I'm focusing on feminism myths. Next slide, please. And so instead of an art project, I decided to go with a research paper because I'm not that artistically inclined. And so I'm focusing more on the Miss America pageant protest that happened in 1968, because that's how start of like feminist myths came about a bit with bra burning. And they were protesting the whole pageant because, you know, the whole the claim that objectified women and all that stuff that came with protesting. And so I'm focusing more on how these feminist myths are perpetrated, and how like media plays a role in movements and protests around feminists and activism in that sense. Next slide, please. And so the big myth, the case I am looking at, is the protest, but more on the whole bra burning aspect of it, because there was no actual bras burned, as everyone tends to believe. They were just thrown into this freedom trash can that was at this protest. And that also brings into the whole how media portrays feminist activism. And one article I found with this research paper talks about how media looks at feminist activism and stuff, and most of the time, like the big activism things, there's not many that are portrayed. There's like one time, there's like within the span year, there's like only like 11 activists, protests, and movements that were portrayed in a good way in articles and magazines. And like I mentioned in this quote, it talks how they're acknowledged like stitch and bitch meetings, go dance groups, baking, those kind of things. So also like degrading these movements a bit also is a big part. And so they just sort of ignore the diverse forms of the collective feminist activism and the politics that go behind the movements. Next slide, please. And so then I'm focusing on how myth can become a tool within this, because it serves like how women can sort of escape the whole male-centered world in a sense. This part it's not as detailed as this is my section I'm really working on right now, but sort of talks about how in the sense of they were looking at the myth of like Medusa, that kind of myths, and correlating it to current feminist myths, and how women can like sort of escape world that men constructed and in their own like sort of discovery kind of way. and it just talks about sort of just new possibilities for like the female identity and this how myth can become a tool. So that's my project at this point in time. I'm just focusing on those aspects. Yeah.
Thanks, Emily. We're passing the baton over to Ellie. Go ahead, Ellie.
Hi. So my project is called 1-800-656-4673. Next slide, please. So the reason why I picked this title is because it's a hotline for the sexual assault of RAINN, which is the world's largest anti-sexual violence organization. Next slide, please. So my objective is to let the hidden voices that are silenced on campus. Majority of these articles came from Syracuse.com, and it will let faculty and staff know that enough is enough and these need to be addressed and taken seriously. Because since my freshman year, because I'm a junior right now, there has been so many issues and nothing has happened, like nothing has changed. The person who does all the assaulting usually gets a slap on the hand and they can still come here and not get kicked out. So I'm putting my foot down and be like, look, if you want a safe campus, our parents are sending us here for good money, get a good education, we should have at least some good safety. Next slide, please. So my inspiration was from Anna Mendieta and Emma Sulkowitz. Mendieta's work was shown to me last semester in my creative art project, and she used her own body to make her work, and it was amazing. And she basically used her own body to make a rape scene of a college student who was raped and murdered, and the case is unsolved. And so her using her body and letting her students come into her apartment and seeing this really shocked them, and it shocked everyone else to see like she did this. And I was using some of her work for my art projects to learn more about it. And just from learning about Mendieta kind of opened a brand new door to me about wells and everything, of how we have these things and we don't do anything about them. Sulkowitz's performance, the mattress performance, Carry That Weight, was when she was attending university. She was sexually assaulted and carried her mattress around for her until she graduated. And it's insane of like thinking of this woman carrying her mattress around campus, even to her graduation, to show her university like this happened, you need to do something about it. Next slide, please. So these are Mendieta's images of herself to basically mimic that rape scene. And they're pretty gory, they're graphic, and there's multiple versions of them. But these two are the ones that I usually use the most in my work that I have of her, because I started out with her work and then I transformed to more. But just walking in and seeing your professor or whoever stand like this in this very like vulnerable spot is shocking to see. And she was recording herself, taking photos of herself so people could see like and get a reaction out of it. So she had that shock factor of this is what it is, we need to do something about it. Next slide. This is Emma Sulkowitz of her walking around her campus carrying that mattress. And I think I have a similar mattress in my own dorm too, and they're pretty heavy. So seeing her basically carrying this mattress around campus, going everywhere with it is pretty insane. Next slide, please. So how I started was originally I had charcoal drawings of Anna Mendieta's Untitled Rape Scene with hidden icons around wells like the bell tower and the boathouse. So on the next slide, you could see what I was trying to incorporate the first time. Next slide. This is what I was trying to do. Originally, I had it digitally to have a sloppy copy of it before I put it on paper, because when you have charcoal, usually you can't erase it. So having a digital idea of what I wanted was easy for me to set it up. And so you could see that I have the bell tower of a photo that I've taken on campus to show like these things. And like here's a boathouse, like another really huge thing at Wells, of like usually students coming down on a hot day to hang out at the lake. So having these really prominent spots at Wells like being shown with these like huge major issues that the school usually hides is like really big. Next slide, please. So a new idea popped into my head of like going away from Mendieta's work and making something new. And this is huge for me because I've been using Mendieta's work since early last semester. So trying to move from a new subject was pretty big for me because I basically scrapped my plans and started fresh. And I wanted to use my photography around campus with news statements of what happened on campus to make it pop and make it really serious that yes, Wells is a beautiful campus. We have beautiful sunsets and everything, but there's a really dark secret that hasn't been fixed in a very long time. And that's a huge issue. Next slide, please. So here's one of the images that I took. And this was a raid that happened on May 13th in 2009 that I found on Syracuse.com. And it was a really serious issue that they couldn't figure out and they wouldn't respond to anybody. So the quote was, "Our first responsibility is to make sure that our students are all okay," says Ann Rollo, the Vice President of Communications in the College Relations Federal Education Department. Data shows reports of two forcible rapes on Wells campus, one in 2005, another in 2006. The college already has measured such as locking entrance to buildings and campus security escorts upon request to ensure the student safety, says Rollo. While we still have like our buildings being locked, sometimes some of the like dorms aren't. And that's like a huge issue that some of these dorms aren't closed. People could just walk in, random people on campus could just walk around campus. And that's like, it's pretty scary. And reading more about this article, like it seemed like nothing was happening. It just seemed like a case that wasn't going to be solved, wasn't going to go to court, and that was it. Next slide. This one was from the bell tower that I went up to, and it was really shocking because this actually came out my freshman year, 3 years ago, that we are ranked #1 in the most college rapes out of 45 upstate New York campuses. And that really shocked me because we are a very small campus, and I'm surprised another bigger university like Syracuse or Cornell didn't get #1, but we got #1. And they asked President Gibraltar to speak about it, but he had no words about it. So it ended just with that. It just ended with President Gibraltar had nothing else to say, the end. And that's really shocking to see that the current college that I go to is #1 in the most rapes in upstate New York. So I'm trying to get rid of that and be like the least one, because this campus is so pretty that I don't want it to be destroyed by something so evil. Next slide, please. This is actually a picture of my dorm that my roommate took before I moved in. And I thought it was pretty powerful to use my own room basically for this at Wells College in Aurora. One sexual assault has been reported between 2010 and 2012. This was also from the #1 like rape causes and everything of us being #1. And using my dorm, I felt was like appropriate, like how Sulkowitz used her own mattress to like show these things. And I wanted to use my own room to show like even the most safest place could either be the most dangerous place to basically have. Next slide, please. This is actually my old studio that I had last semester. And I was asking people around campus that it's really hard to read, but in 2017, there was 29 rapes per 1,000, 59, and 2 fondlings. In 2016, there was 1 rape and 2 fondlings. And so I asked the seniors, like, did you know about this? And majority of the seniors said yes, and it was by the same person. The same assaulter did this 29 times, and campus security did nothing. So far, there was nothing, and she was able to be back on campus. And that was a huge issue that I had of saying like, there was 29 rapes on campus, same assaulter, she was able to go here still, and nothing happened. And that's probably why that we were #1 in this, because we don't do anything about it. And that's an issue. Next slide, please. So locations of the images was the boathouse, the bells, my room when I first moved in, and my studio, because these are like really big places that I go to like relax and everything, because you could usually find me in my studio working or mostly in my room, but everyone knows about the bells, everyone knows about the boathouse. That's things everyone goes to relax. And if we can't have a safe campus, how can we relax in these locations when campus security and faculty and staff can't protect their own students or do anything about it? Next slide, please. So originally I planned to, but if there's a in-person meet, I wanted to print out postcards that you could find in the bookstore, or the cards that the gallery gives out. And on the back would be more information about these issues and why I did it, to talk about like my inspiration from Mendieta and how her work basically transformed my art, and researching more about this stuff and why I want to do this and how this is a very serious thing and it's affected many students on campus. And it probably will always affect students on campus, that we won't do anything about it. And this needs to really end. And we should take a big stand on it, because if this keeps on going on, we can't be safe on campus. And how can we be safe on campus if we're spending so much money? Our parents are hoping for the best of us, and we're constantly scared for what's going on. Next slide, please. So what's next is I want to print these images and put them all around campus for staff and students, faculty to see. So they may think it's a normal postcard, and they turn around and see these powerful things. And it's unacceptable that the school hides these issues from students. As many as finds Wells as like a safe spot or home, but how can we be safe when these issues are going on? That's the main question. If we can't do anything about it, how can we be safe here? How can we relax here? How can we get more students here if this is going behind closed doors? Next slide. That's it. Thanks.
Thanks, Ellie. We're going to turn it to our collaborative project crew, Avery, Matt, Keelan.
This will be our last presentation. Thank you all for sticking with us.
Hi, my name's Avery Avalos. I'm a junior and a studio art major. And our project is called Point of Departure. Do you guys want to like say your names? Please.
I'm Keelan.
I'm Matt.
Next slide. So our objective, which I believe Keelan is going to cover.
Yeah, our objective was to address issues that trans folk on campus face here. Basically, we wanted to focus on a very like local target, and Wells's institution, which we care a lot about. And this is going to become like a series of like addressing social issues at Wells, but we kind of like went back and forth, which we'll talk about in the next slide, over like what specifically to address within the book itself. But yeah, like an objective to spread awareness and make change.
So basically our project changed about 3 times while conducting research. It went from, initially it was a narrow perspective, and then we were like, no, let's broaden it. And then once we broadened it, we realized, no, it needed to be narrowed. So we ended up finishing like our idea on transgender issues on campus. One, because it's a subject that we can talk about pretty easily. We're 3 people who are part of the LGBTQ plus community in one shape or form, and we know about a lot of the issues that happen to the transgender students on campus, whether it was like afflicted upon our friends, for me personally, myself, or other people that we don't actually know on campus, but because of being allies and being part of the community, we're able to really hear about these issues and have like an open channel between the queer community on campus to talk about these issues. Next slide.
So in this video, going over the book mock-up itself, I'm making a slip for the book, and as for the structure of it, it is supposed to be look like Macmillan, where of course Macmillan's icon building on campus and home the administration, and in this book, there are 26 panels, both front and back. So that way the reader can open up various parts of this book and are displayed information about these issues on campus.
We personally felt like a book was the best format for this information to be placed because it legitimizes all of the issues. One of the problems that we run into a lot when it comes to looking at issues on Wells campus is that a lot of the things aren't printed. A lot of it is digital and a lot of it is only accessed through digital records. And at times that can make it a little difficult to actually believe and to see that as a true thing that's happening. Next slide.
So I did the sketches for this book. This is one of the first ones. I wanted to use, like, obviously a lot of Wells iconography. And this like specific picture of like Minerva with the rainbow sunglasses, I thought was like the right kind of balance between like Wells and like queerness, but you can see that she's not, it's like cheesy, but like she's not like looking at the issue because she's got shades on. But yeah. Next slide, please. And this is kind of like a irreverent drawing of or pattern of the Wells van. I drew this one specifically because like the head of transportation is kind of known to be a transphobe. So I wanted to call that out, and this is about like addressing things directly. Yeah. Next slide. So now we'll talk about our inspirations. Next slide, please. So this was my inspirations for the illustrations. And Mara Baldwin has been an inspiration for like a lot of my projects this semester. And this specific project of hers, More Perfect, More Better, More Plenty, was her like thought experiment where she tried like creating artifacts based off of this early like 20th century utopian novel of this like all woman society where like the ideals of this society, which was like this whole utopia, I think I said that, but like the ideals were also ultimately what was killing the society itself. And Wells has had like a very interesting relationship with gender throughout its lifetime. And I think one of the ways that we can grow further is to be more accepting of genders that do not fit within the binary. Next slide.
So my inspiration was Felix Gonzalez Torres. And I only picked one of his artworks, which is Untitled. And this particular one was installed on a large billboard in New York City. And so part of the reason that I picked him as one of my inspirations is because I found myself getting drawn towards artists in the like late 80s, early 90s, who were very unapologetic about their queerness and were very open about it. And Felix was definitely one of them, as his partner was succumbed to his AIDS during the epidemic. And he created a lot of artworks based around his love for him and this sort of plea for the government to actually do something, to actually take accountability for what they're not doing and to help people. And he also was part of an artist collective called Group Material that he joined in 1987, which acted as an activist group that really encouraged sort of community education and getting the community to understand people and not be so apprehensive to understanding one another. So that's why I picked this, because I feel like with this book that we're creating, there's a lot of issues that I've personally dealt with in regards to transphobia on campus and transphobic events, as well as microaggressions. So I personally have a lot of connection with our artwork, and I really wanted to pick an artist who also has that deep connection and who also has that very personal emotion towards it. Next slide.
So for my inspiration, Keith Smith, specifically volume 1 of non-adhesive binding, because in there I learned how to make the structure, or like the middle part of the book, where there are different single page folds, but I specifically chose a series of 3 pages with 3 folds that are bounded with pamphlet stitch, so that way there are multiple panels that the reader can work through, and adding the 2 pages at the ends of the book to simulate like not exactly like the pillars, but like the arms of Macmillan. Next slide.
So part of this is that we care about Wells and we want Wells to do better. And we want them to actually have a voice and not react, but be proactive and stop these issues, and to actively listen to their students when these issues are brought up. And that's one of the main things that we were taught in this class, is to actively listen, to actively pay attention to what's happening and what people are saying, because then you can react appropriately and be proactive with future actions. And so that's basically what we're really trying to do with this piece, is create something that will hopefully like light a little bit of fire to get these movements to start happening.
Thank you, crew. And thanks to everyone in panel 2 for presenting. We are at 5:30, which I know we had as our endpoint for this event. So I do want to respect everyone's time, but I also want to keep talking, as I always do. So if folks are able to stick around, I think that we should try to do some participatory discussion.
This feels like the end of every class we've had this semester. Like, time's over, no.
Time's over, but we're still in the middle of everything, so we're going to keep talking about it. And it also, I mean, it's reflective of the fact that, like most things being a work in progress, a lot of the work is always being done. What is finished? You know, this is ongoing work that we're doing as scholars and artists and activists.
So we're sensitive to everyone's time. If you need to jump out of the call, the students and Leah and I will stay on the call if there are additional questions. I would love, as a way at least of starting that conversation, to ask the panelists in the second group to respond to, once again, Giovanna's question for the first group, which is what have you learned about yourself in the process of making this work, being a part of this collective?
Emily, can you start off with that?
Yeah, definitely. So like Angie said in the first section, the whole having resources and sources as a big part of activism, definitely. And also for me specifically, because I'm not like really like an artist, I saw how the art and activism story went into my other like majors and courses are intertwined a bit. So that's what I took from it, definitely. And plus it's great class, so.
Thanks, Emily. Ellie, do you have any thoughts to share?
I mean, like from this class, I really learned a lot of like how activism can really change someone's point of view of everything when it comes down to research, and always learning new ideas when it comes down to showing their art. Because activism, like an art, is like really crazy. Like the ways that you could really make things. Instead of making a poster, you can make like flags, you can make clothing. Like art is like always changing, and it's so cool that you could use different forms for activism. That's what this class really has taught me.
Yeah, I'll go. I guess this class taught me the most that collaboration is extremely important. It helps with everything. And to be nice to myself when it comes to my artwork, because that's what a lot of that's what both of our professors have consistently told us, as well as a lot of the artists that they've like brought to for us to meet and for us to talk to and observe have really emphasized like take care of yourself, because you can't really make anything if you're not taking care of yourself.
From what I learned with this class is that really finding my own activist voice, where I know I want to be active about issues, but don't exactly know how, and like there's many different ways of doing so, and like also best part is like not doing it alone. So also learned how to collaborate this semester, which I've never collaborated with anyone before, and I've learned how to be a part of a team that's like just artists.
Yeah, I learned that you don't have to have like the biggest network or like the most resources in order to make an impact. And that like, you know, our voice matters. And like also to be brave and like talk about things that you're afraid to talk about. And that was like definitely our topic for me. Because like being vocal about issues at Wells is kind of hard sometimes, because you're like, oh no, what's gonna happen? But yeah.
Thank you so much to all of you. Thank you to everybody who has stuck with us and participated in this event. It has been, I will speak for Leah, this class has been one of the great joys of our teaching career for both of us. We talk about it all the time. So thank you for this. We're so excited for the last few weeks of class and to see where these projects end up. For the students, the panelists in the class, please be sure that you're catching, again, the generous questions and comments that are coming through on the chat. And
yeah, I'm gonna say we're gonna save this file, the chat file, and make it available to you all. The recording of the event will also be shared, and we have an opportunity to actually go back and watch this. And I think that there's been a lot of just generosity in our community. So I just really want to say how much I appreciate all of you folks. Like, thank you. It's really special. Appreciate that.
That's what we have.
Yeah. Thanks all.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks for that comment just now, Rachel.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, everybody. I just, I was saying, I don't want to sound patronizing, but it's just really cool. I came back to Wells several times after graduation, but usually at reunion or like kind of off season. So I didn't know a lot of the students in those years. And now I'm working remotely. So I didn't get to know most of you when I was on campus for a year. And so it's just really cool to see. I just feel like I'm always bragging about you to all of my friends and coworkers and how wonderful this community is. And you've got a lot of great allies in the alum community. And it's just really cool to see your work that you're doing, and how just very cool young people, you're going to do cool work in the world. So it's really nice. Thanks for being part of this.
Thank you, Rachel. Thanks for being here and all of your support on this event.
Organizing this epic series.
Thank you. And Avery has just been like the super trooper. I feel like we're always like, Avery, can you do this? So make sure you get your swag items from Emily, the tote bags, there's masks, there's stickers, they're so cute. The logo is really powerful and awesome. We have some more events still. Rhea just said a really nice comment in the chat as well. So I want to make sure you all see that. But yeah, it's really cool. I feel really moved seeing your artwork. This will all be up on YouTube in the next few days too, on the Wells YouTube. So if you want to see it, but also to share it, and it will get a good amount of views, because I know a lot of folks couldn't make it at 4 o'clock today.
Leah, I have a little very small piece of teacher advice, which is that in my classes, which also often just kind of keep going, usually I ask one student to volunteer to be the person who said, because I'll get to a point where I say, oh my God, we're not going to cover and we're not going to get to, we're not going to. So I usually have one student who volunteers to be the person to say, when I start, it's okay if we don't get to everything. So you might decide that you want to have a student, you want to ask a student to perform that function in your class.
I love that advice. Yeah. If any of you want to volunteer to be the person to say it's okay if we don't do everything.
Even teaching online this semester, she'll go, Professor, it's okay if we don't get to everything.
I can say it to everyone. It's okay if we don't reach everything. We still have time to go over it next class. So it's all right. Just take a deep breath. We all did great.
Sasha, tell me that in history of photography also every day.
Thanks, Sasha. Thanks, Anna. I really appreciate that. Thanks, everyone.
That's what we got. Thanks, everyone. Great work.
Yeah, great.
Amazing.
Work. Appreciate it. This will be an ongoing conversation.
Thank you. I would love to see the final projects. If you can make it happen.
Yeah, let's make it happen.
Let's figure it out.
How would you do that in ordinary times?
Spring Room Gallery, maybe?
It seems to me that I've been to some events where there like even sometimes during reunion, there's a panel of students presenting their project work. Are you thinking about how that might happen given current weirdness?
Rhea's back. In normal years, Rhea would be on campus at least twice a year every year, or once a year every year.
It's true. She speaks the truth.
It's true. Yeah, Rhea's known me half my life now.
Is that true?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
I was a freshman in 2002.
I love
that. I don't know. That just freaks me. I have to do that.
I'm 36. We go back.
But what are your thoughts about how this becomes public?
Well, we will have a standard kind of end of semester final critique for our class as the class component. A number of these projects do have outward facing goals. Thinking of, say, Angie's project, if we can pull back way back to the beginning of the presentations. Angiee is making a work that will be digitized and then available online with a specific kind of endpoint there, as just one example. So I think that there will be remnants. I am always thinking that there should be a publication, there should be a kind of book. I think we could put together a pretty fantastic catalog of the production from this class.
Yeah, and I think it's a conversation that we haven't gotten to have yet because we've been kind of focused on this event, but I think that we can open up to our class and try to think about how to create a kind of public facing space for the final products,
Yeah.
final projects. Appreciate the question.
Like
Okay,
everything,
well,
a work in progress.
Thank
have a good weekend, everybody.
you so
You
much.
too. Thank you.
Happy
And I'll be in touch.
weekend.
I'm sorry, there's only Leah's name, so I'm sorry I forgot the name of the person who's sitting with you.
I'm Tara.
Tara Kohn.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay, so I'll be in touch about that question that I asked.
that's great. Yes, please do.
Fantastic.
Well, and Rhea, you can always ask me too, and I can connect you. You've got my email.
I know where to find you.
Thanks, everybody.
All right, bye.
Yeah, have a great night. Happy weekend.
Yeah, you too.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.